Figure it out. I have Khaleesi Beck in second grade and also a third grader, Cole Beck. And we're new to Mark Day in general this year.
Welcome. It's so great to see you. So great to have everyone here. So I thought today we would do a couple of things. I'm trying to stick to as much normalcy as possible, both for kids and for parents. One of the comments last night in the chat feature while we were going through our presentation was, can we do SEL for parents? And so that is always a little bit of what these copies are for, is to have an opportunity to check in and to share and to sort of see how we're doing. I think it's really easy to get bogged down in, talking about nothing but pandemics and safety and returning to school. And I'm happy to go into that at any point today if you want. But I also thought we might do a little bit of just sort of what we would normally do at a second grade coffee. And so I'm going to follow our script from last year, and I'm going to ask you to use the chat feature. And I'm going to ask you to, some of you may have done this in other sessions. Oh, Mike's in there. Okay, perfect. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the next slide. All right. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to, we did our introductions, on the chat feature, and I don't want you to press return, so this is important, so you're going to hang on to this. You're going to, in the chat feature, write down a parenting decision you have made where you wonder if you made the right decision, or something that you're currently trying to decide as a parent and you're wondering if you can get some advice on it. So take a moment to type that into the chat feature, but don't press return. So either a parenting decision that you're wondering if maybe you made the wrong decision or maybe the right decision, you're not really sure, time will tell, or something that you're grappling with right now that you would like some advice from this group on, or just to put it out there so that you know that you're not the only one wondering about that. And I'll tell you when to press return on that. And while you're thinking about that, another thing that we often do is talk about just sort of some of the general stages that you can expect with your second graders right now at this point. Responsive Classroom is one of the curricular programs that we use. And so it's a way that we engage in morning meetings and engage in conversations with kids. And so you may have received some of this information in your back to school packet from the yardsticks pamphlets that we usually send home. And these are general things, and this is also an extraordinary time. So some of these general things that we see with second graders might be heightened at this point in time, or might be opposite for your kiddos, depending on what's going on for them right now. But it's nice to sort of know, and again, make a connection if there's something that is resonating with you that you're seeing at home. I think it's also an interesting moment because you're getting a little bit of an insider view as far as what your teachers are seeing, with your kids, and you're getting a chance to see that at home, sort of unfiltered, if you will. And so you may have seen comments on report cards over the last couple of years that now are ringing true because you're seeing them at the kitchen table. Or you may be seeing some new behavior that is different for your child because of these extraordinary circumstances and either emotions or anxiety or just the platform that are difficult for your kids. So there's any number of things that you can expect right now. But I think, 8, we definitely see as an age of invention, creation, and cognitive curiosity. Second graders, really into asking lots of questions and trying to figure things out, getting lots of stuff done and not being as excited about accuracy and details. So second grade is a time when we often see students start to rush to get things done and they're excited to finish before their peers. If you're in a classroom, it's very common in a second grade classroom to hear the pencil put down and done. Because that's a sign of being smarter than everyone else if you finish before everyone else. And so we have to work against that. A growing sense of confidence. This is something that you may be seeing at home, or you may be seeing them lean into you more right now because they are home with you. So some of the things that they might be able to do on their own if they were at school and with their teacher in person right now. They may be looking to you for guidance, and you may be struggling to sort of give them that opportunity for independence right now. And so we can talk a little bit more about that. Really big into comparing themselves to others. Again, not as much of an issue in the digital platform, but if they were in class, you know, this is a time where our kids are moving a little bit away from the egocentric, you know, bubble that they have existed in for a while, to really understanding more about what's out there and what their peers are doing and able to do. And so they make lots of comparisons, and quick to start new things, quick to drop them. It's good. Eighth graders are perfect fodder for all the fads that come through, rainbow looms and Beyblades and everything else, because they're quick to jump onto these things and then just as quick to move away from them when they get bored. And then this whole idea, I think, on the last one of children being really needing positive response from parents right now and changeability. You may have heard me say this in a different presentation if you have other kids or in different grade levels, but during these times especially, our kids are watching us for our reactions about, you know, how to engage in the world and how to approach challenges. And so the more we can model sort of that calm sense of enthusiasm for what we get to do rather than that sense of loss for what we don't get to do right now, the more it helps our students. And so the more we can lean on each other for those moments of sort of expressing sense of a loss, and the more you can lean on your partners for that, but really to try to exhibit with your kids that sense of excitement and thinking about what it is that we do get to do and the things that we're lucky to have, because they will feed on that and they will really rise to that occasion. And we've seen that. We've seen them in the Zoom classrooms. We've seen them, you know, taking on challenges and rolling with things and getting used to things that I never would have expected them to get used to. So hopefully you've had a chance to put something into the chat feature. Don't press return yet. Danielle, did I miss anything on our generalized list of 8-year-old stuff? Anything else you want to say that you see?
That sounded great.
Awesome. I am going to stop sharing this then, and you can go ahead and press return on your chat feature, and let's see what starts to come in here. And we'll just sort of go through the list and either talk about what people have brought up, or maybe if someone's asking for advice, we can collectively give that. And then we can jump into questions and answers about anything that people have regarding second grade, regarding the presentation from the admin team yesterday. And we can just sort of see what's on people's minds. So, and if you have to jump off, please don't feel bad. I know people have work, and there's as Stephanie was saying, there's no good time for these meetings. And so we understand that it's sort of right in the middle of life. And the recording will be sent out in Hip Pocket tomorrow. So changing technology use, particularly as it relates to more time spent at home. I think no matter what age your kiddo is, that's something that we're all struggling with. I know, you know, we have moments, I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader, and they are online all day long, and they're very productive in their time online right now. But the problem is then they, you know, they also are trying to use the digital platform for their social connections and trying to Zoom with friends afterwards. And so it's creating this scenario where they can really be in front of a screen all day long, and we just sort of get desensitized to it. So we've had conversations, we've had arguments, we've had, you know, agreements and all different types of things. But I think, you know, the thing to remember is that this is an extraordinary time, and it is okay to do something different during this time than you would normally do. And once we start to move back into more in-person learning, it might be a little tricky to pull away from some of that technology time that kids have now gotten used to, and that we've gotten used to, I think, as parents too. And so don't be surprised if, you know, students resist having less technology once we go back. Some of our kids may not have been exposed to technology at this point, and now we've asked them to be. You know, I know my girls did not have access to computers and iPads when they were in 2nd grade in the same way that we're asking kids to use them now. And so know that that is something that we are aware of and that you may need support in as we move back into more online or move back into more in-person learning. Other questions about technology right now along those lines that are coming up, feel free to just unmute yourself if there's other stuff that relates to that question. This one from Charles, screen time, we've decided video games are forbidden during the week. How much time is appropriate? I think that's a good question, Charles. You know, the setting limits, I think is, you know, and what works within your family is going to be important. And this is going to be a balance because I know, like I said, my own daughters are using Zoom very productively during the day for school. And I would say they're actually using it relatively productively, you know, in their off hours to check in with their friends and to have little Zoom meetings in groups and to be social. And so I think, you know, finding those sort of times when it is just a video game or it is something kind of mindless that you might be able to limit, that would be the stuff to limit. But be careful on just sort of putting a blanket limit on all technology because there are things that kids may be doing that are useful. Second grade, probably less on the social end, but you know, you might be facilitating play dates with them or little group chat sessions with them. Danielle, did you want to add anything to that?
I was just going to add, I think you're right. I think limit setting is different and looks different in each and every family. But I think things to look for is if your child starts to become almost hyper fixated on a particular game or a particular topic, and that's all they can kind of talk about or share about in their day, that might be a good warning signal to just kind of shift and make sure that there's other aspects being brought into their daily routines. And then if you're noticing that bedtimes are a struggle, what I've been noticing with my own kids personally and also in my private practice is that kids are having a much harder time falling asleep because they ultimately have so much less physical activity without that kind of physical interaction with their peers and things like that. And being so stationary in front of a computer, it can often kind of get their mind going at nighttime and just make it that much harder. So making sure that there's just a balance that works in your family. And if you're noticing things aren't working for you in the evenings or things aren't just gelling well in conversation with your kids, that might be a good warning to shift the routine and what's going on.
Oh, Amy, you just touched upon one of my biggest frustrations in life, which is packing snacks and lunches and dealing with that for kiddos. Oh my gosh, I was so glad when my girls started taking 2 hot lunches and we didn't have to pack lunches anymore for a while. And I'm so sad that we don't have hot lunch right now because we'll have to pack it again. If anyone has a great system for this, especially we're in the same boat right now. My girls are both home all day long and they're old enough now where they sort of forage through the kitchen as well, but it doesn't change as they get older. They still complain about the food and you know, wonder about what they can eat and don't eat what we make, but then eat whatever they feel like they're going to eat. So I feel for you on this, and I don't know if anyone else has any great suggestions of things that they've done either while you're at home or you know, as you're sending kids to school. We have had a little bit of success when my girls were in the sort of 2nd to 4th grade arena of buying healthy snacks and having them available and then letting them take a little bit more ownership of packing what they wanted to take for snacks to school. And that would at least, you know, ensure that we would not see it coming back home again in the lunchbox. But I don't know if anyone else has anything that they wanted to add to that. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have any sage words of wisdom.
I'll just have to say that it has been working fairly well. You know, we have like, I've been in the refrigerator of like chopped up fruit and vegetables and then kind of drier stuff like pretzels. And I don't know, they seem to be doing pretty well with deciding, okay, I better save some for later because I know I'll be hungry in the afternoon, not eating it all at once. So.
Yeah, I felt really inept as a parent. Over the summer, I think it was, or at some point, you know, there was some Instagram post of someone who had like this perfectly organized refrigerator with all of the, you know, perfectly cut vegetables and things that were available. So I'm nowhere near that list at all. Changing technology relates to the time spent at home. I think we talked about that and how much screen time is too much. I spent a lot of time this summer trying to do some research around appropriate screen time. I think, you know, in this day and age where we're actually trying to utilize it as a platform for academic instruction, it does kind of throw things out of whack. And so I was unable to find any real consistent research around, you know, appropriate usage. I imagine coming in the next couple of years on the tails of this experience, we're going to be seeing a lot more of this research. But again, you know, I think As a school, we decided long ago to have our formal technology program really begin in third grade. So much of what we're doing right now is counter to what we would normally do. And so I think if that is a guide for all of you, just to know that we are making the best of this situation, and we are using technology in the ways that we feel are is most appropriate. And this is not what we would choose to do normally. And so as we are able to trying to wean our kids back off of this and get back into a state of less reliance on technology is going to be something that we're all going to have to work at together. Sending kids to school in person, knowing they'll be happy, but not knowing the risks of COVID in kids. So I think this is, a struggle that is very real for all of us, and is going to be very different from one family to the next. Hopefully everyone was able to get some clear information from the presentation that we gave last night. And things are changing. It's an emotional decision. It is a health decision, and it does need to be very different for each family. So I would say, my biggest piece of advice would be to reach out if you have specific questions, to know that as a school, we are following things as closely as we can and doing whatever we can to be as safe as possible upon our return to school. And that we are really moving from this place of, as a society, trying to avoid risk to really more risk mitigation, and trying to move into scenarios that are going to feel less safe than some of the things that we were trying to do. I was actually talking with Joe Harvey the other day, and it's kind of one of those catch-22s where the better job you do of sort of putting this fear and this sense that people really need to lock down and take all these safety precautions, the harder it is then when you try to switch gears and ask people to do things that go against that in any way, shape, or form. And in some ways, we're now asking people and trying to move into a different mode that is going against some of the protocols and against some of the things that we've been trying to do as a society, as far as, avoiding contact and avoiding being around people. So it feels weird, and it's hard to get your head around, and, we're struggling with it, my family as well. And, I think please ask questions if you have specific things that you would like to know that would help you in that decision. But I think that's probably one that is not, well, taking away screen time punished me. I feel that for sure. It becomes this battle, and I don't know the answer to that one. Danielle, you know the answer to that one?
I think for any kind of natural consequence, you just need to be able to set limits where it feels achievable for you. If you're taking away something for a week at a time, know what that means for you. And can you stay that strong? And is it going to make you go crazy? And if it is, set smaller time frames, absolutely. So they can feel rewarded and successful sooner, and you're not going absolutely insane. And then just set that limit and keep your language short and sweet, trying to avoid those power struggles and get out of the debating conversations, and things like that are really, really important. So trying to pull away from that, keep yourself short and direct, and have them feel the natural consequences if they keep pushing and hounding you and pulling at you, that their consequence could extend or get a little bit longer, and then direct them in other directions for more physical activity or whatever the activity can be replaced with. I don't know. That's hard. I struggle with that at my own house as well.
Zoe, I appreciate your comment too about choosing to participate in not all of the online classes because of the screen time fatigue. And I would say you're not alone in that. I think there are definitely parents who are opting out of certain things. What I would say is, if this is a common occurrence for your kiddos, just to check in with the classroom teacher, because they can guide as to what are the sort of main course items for any given day, and what are sort of side dishes and dessert menu items, is how we like to talk about them with kids, because there may be certain things that are really important both on an academic or a social level for kids to tune into. And so if you have a little bit of heads up around that, then you can guide Phoebe as to, when she can put her energy into the screen time, and when it's okay to sort of opt out. PE is a great example of that. We're making PE available for students every day, but we are not expecting that students will log in every day. So, you know, if you're logging in twice a week for live PE classes and the rest of the time you're going outside, great. If you're not logging in at all for PE, that's also understandable, but I would just say, just let us know. Maybe shoot Mr. Bowers a note so he's not looking for kids, because he is taking attendance as well. But we expect that parents are going to make those accommodations for their kiddos, and that you will have that flexibility as you move through. But when it comes to the academic stuff, I would say just when in doubt, check with teachers so that they both know why kids aren't logging in, and then they can also guide as to you know, what should be a priority. The morning breaks, Jeremy's saying designated snack break. Yep, eat then wait until lunch. Pediatrician recommends getting out and exercises. That's something that I would definitely say, you know, if you are home with your kids or have any ability to support them, that is one of the biggest things that you can do, is to know when their breaks are. We did put 15-minute breaks throughout the day in schedules for a reason, so that it's not to make the day more complicated. It's really because that's what we would be doing at school. We'd be taking brain breaks. They'd be, you know, stretching or having a mindful moment or having a recess or having snack or, you know, any number of things. And so those are, you know, even just going outside for a moment and doing some jumping jacks, or as I saw in here, walking the dog, or, you know, any number of things just to get them away from the screen is really helpful, and can go a long way in extending the amount of time that they're able to then attend in the following lessons. And let's see, getting kids out of bed before 8 a.m. Yep. Yep, more about getting kids outside, up, snuggling. All right, I think we got everything. I'm gonna open it up. It is 10:30. And let's just open it up to questions, comments, or concerns from folks. And that we can be granular or we can be big picture. So nothing's off limits. So if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself. If you need to drop off at any time, feel free.
I was just going to add a comment about when you take away screen time, it punishes the parent. I think what I've found to be really helpful is to give like 10-minute, 5-minute warnings, and then like 1 minute before the time limit is up to go and sit next to them and kind of engage with whatever they're doing, and tell them, you know, I know it's really hard to turn off your device. I know you really enjoy it. It's hard for me too, but you know, we talked about this as your limit, so we got to turn it off now. I think it's like that gradual kind of changing and reminding that the time limit is coming up has been really helpful.
Yeah. The other thing is, if you make, and this is, again, it's harder as a parent, but I found the moments where I make it an invite rather than a demand. You know, if I'm inviting my daughter to come do something with me for 15 minutes versus just telling her to get off the screen, that often will go a longer way than just telling her to turn off the the iPad. So coming to walk the dog with me, or, you know, running to the store, or any number of things, you know, just to change gears.
And kind of piggybacking off both of that, but empowering them to be able to set their own limit as well. If you know that you need it off within the next 30 minutes and there's, you know, 20 minutes left in their show, instead of saying turn it off now or whatever it is, helping them feel like you guys are in kind of a negotiation moment, or okay, you're needing this right now, that's totally great, and then when that's done, we need to be able to shift here. So it helps them feel kind of empowered and taking ownership in when they're turning it off too, instead of mom and dad just saying it's done.
What else is going on? The second grade family's got it all figured out. It's good.
Charles here.
Yeah.
Briefly, if we, like, let's say as we start to phase back into school, what's going to be the trigger to effectively stop that and go back to right where we are? I mean, what has to happen for something to get messed up and
That's
put
a
us
good
right
question.
back in this same
So,
stream?
we have Wendy Broderick and Sophie Schulman are sort of our liaisons to the public health department, and so they will be monitoring everything and reporting everything that comes up, as far as, you know, any contact tracing or any incidents that we're worried about. There are certain triggers. I don't recall exactly what the percentages are, but there's a certain percentage of the population that would require us to shut down as a school as far as cases are concerned. One thing I will say is, having learned from the learning hubs that we've had going on with about 50 students, for children of essential workers, we've learned a lot in that situation. And one of the things we've learned is how something relatively small can create quite a bit of disruption. So, we're going into cold and flu season, and, that's one of the things that I really am concerned about is when a child who is young is expressing, COVID-like symptoms that may be anything from a basic cold to anxiety to the flu to actual COVID symptoms, we have to treat it all as if it were COVID symptoms. And that triggers sending students home, that potentially triggers sending siblings home, that potentially triggers any number of things. And so it doesn't take many of those instances to really disrupt what's going on. But to actually be forced to close down, it's actually percentages of the population, Charles.
I heard that last night from Joe. What I was actually more getting at was from an external to the school. So let's say within the county or within San Rafael, is there something that would happen within the county or in the city proper that would say, okay, everybody, full stop?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the tiers now that we're in. And so right now we're sort of sitting in that red tier and hoping to stay there long enough to be able to have schools open. I think if we were to move out of that back into the purple tier, then that would be a potential trigger for the health department to say businesses are going to take a step back, schools are going to have to take a step back. And so, it would all just be following the guidance of the health department and those different tiers. Okay. Yeah, Amber.
But since we have a waiver, would going back to purple trip, that for K through 5?
Not necessarily. So that is one of the reasons that we did apply for the waiver, was to have a little bit more security and safety as far as planning is concerned, so that we wouldn't be in this position of sort of flip-flopping back and forth. And so that would be an ongoing conversation. And again, the bigger piece there is, as things shift in the community, how do our families feel? How do our teachers feel? Again, those are the other pieces that would have to all be considered in those moments. So it's one thing to have a waiver and to be okayed to come back or to stay in school, even if the county shifts. It's another thing to sort of know what your community is thinking and to know what your teachers are feeling in that moment, and to make sure that you're moving in step together in a way that makes everyone feel safe and supported. So, we've engaged in conversations ahead of applying for the waiver with teachers and put things in place for teachers who may be questioning or have actual health reasons that they wouldn't be able to come back to school if the county was in a different place. And so, hopefully we won't get to that point, but there are scenarios that could potentially happen where the county could go backwards, and even with a waiver, we may make a decision to close down as well. So it's, I hate to say it's kind of a wait and see game, but really everything right now is. But if you didn't know, we did apply for the waiver and we were approved. So we do have the waiver. Right now, as we've said, we're sticking with our timeline, which basically is, the same as what we would be able to do with the waiver right now, give or take a week or so as far as transitioning back in. And again, we made that decision so that we weren't flip-flopping back and forth from distance to in-person mode, and that we could really do a thoughtful transition for our teachers and for our students. What else? I'm curious to know from this group, because second grade is sort of that moment for us where we can see a little bit more independence, what parents are seeing as far as their kids being able to independently or not engage in the second grade curriculum right now online. So I'm sure it probably runs the spectrum, But I'm curious what people's experience is with this. Right now, I don't see any children in the background. So that means some of your kids are somewhere right now doing something.
I would say Evan, he can do like in class, totally independent and doing the stuff that the teacher's having them do, completely independent. You know, sometimes I have to help him with getting onto Seesaw or, you know, figuring out how to enter the information and stuff into
Right.
Seesaw. But getting to class, knowing when he has a class, definitely I have to manage that. I've started just setting Alexa alerts. So that just tells him whenever he needs to get to class. So if I have Alexa alerts set, then he can get there. Somebody has to tell him, whether it's me or
Go ahead, Mike.
Our experience has been quite positive. Khaleesi, I don't know if it's a boy-girl thing, is on top of it. In fact, she came down and said, "Hey, Daddy, your coffee's starting in 10 minutes." So she's on top of it. And then I actually have a problem kind of pulling her away from schoolwork in general, whether it's Zoom or just her concentration. I have the exact opposite with our son, who's in 3rd grade. So I have to remind him a little bit more and be proactive. But we've been quite pleased with everything that Mark Day has been doing and all the efforts. I cannot say enough how impressed our family is with the whole institution. So
Awesome. And just, this is one of those moments too, where it's good to realize that the time and the lack of ability to understand the passing of time is not because of distance learning. Like, that is something that we work on with 2nd graders, you know, anyway. And so if you walked into a 2nd grade class, there would be a visual representation and teachers would literally be coloring in the clock to let kids know when the next activity was going to begin. It's the reason that they spend so much time going over the daily schedule. It's the reason, you know, as Danielle talked about, like giving warnings. Teachers are constantly saying, okay, in 5 minutes we're doing this, in 3 minutes we're doing this, in 2 minutes we're doing this. So some of those things, don't worry if your child doesn't have a sense of time and isn't able to get themselves to their class, because that is absolutely expected at this age group and would not be any different if they were in their classroom. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Hi, for Max, we really struggled in the spring with the abstract, art was just, it's like I'm an art teacher all of a sudden, and I'm sitting with him and he's like, what is this? Like, why am I not in my classroom with my friends and the art teacher is teaching me instead of you? So I definitely can see with him, like math is, you know, good, or anything that's like tangible and math or like on Seesaw and he knows it's due is where we are good. And then where we run into the, you know, the limitations is like writing workshop, for instance, like is more abstract to him and he has to like sit and think.
Right.
Then he likes me to sit with him. So we have our way, you know, we have things where I know he says, Mom, can you just sit with me? And that's good. At least he identifies that and asks me to sit with him. And then having the specialist wheel, I think, has been really helpful, by the way, because we're just doing drama right now, I think, unless I'm missing something. And so he's doing good in drama, and like I think the level of expectation for their age, and like, you know, there's never been, you know, you usually don't have a take-home assignment for drama when you're in school in person. Right. So to not have anything to do at home is very helpful for the parents, I think, because otherwise, you know, like they were having take-home art homework last spring and it was like, what? We've never had that before. And so anyway, so not having art right now, I've noticed, is you're just having one of those subjects at a time has been really helpful. So thank you for that.
No, I'm glad. And that was a big feedback moment in a design challenge over the summer that I think has been really positive, and it is going to keep going as we phase back into in-person learning, partly because it's hard to move off of that wheel structure once you've started it, so that you know, can make sure that everyone gets the same rotations, but also it does limit exposure as well. So it allows students to be with one specialist teacher for a chunk of time. And I think, to be honest, I think our specialists are actually really enjoying being able to dig into the material in a slightly different way. So we may have learned something and may have, you know, potentially created a shift in our curriculum that might have some longer lasting impact. Molly, did you?
Yeah, sorry, I missed Claire in the background if you want to hear her. But I would just say I think it's been really helpful that they're doing their writing along with the teachers, because in the spring, you know, having that be homework after all the classes was a point of contention with us. Like, it was really difficult to get Kira to sit down and do that writing. So now that, you know, I don't have to worry about it, she's doing it with her teacher, it's really, you know, there's no more complaining and fighting over that. So that's great.
Awesome.
I would say we're still having trouble with world language. I think it's just hard for her to connect over Zoom when she doesn't necessarily understand what's being said. She just loses, you know, focus really fast with that. So that one's still hard for us.
Okay. Yeah, I've been in conversation with the world language teachers quite a bit, and you know, they're working on different strategies and trying to figure out ways to do it. You know, in the world language, in a class that's really meant to be immersion and that's meant to be very interactive. You know, if you were in a world language classroom in 2nd grade, it would be a lot of call and respond, and you know, those are the things that are limiting on Zoom. It's tough to do those in any big groups, and so working with the teachers on, you know, highlighting smaller groups of kids or highlighting individuals. And then that becomes tricky because then it, you know, creates anxiety for some of our kiddos that don't want to be spotlighted, but we're working on it and trying to figure that out, and happy to hear any suggestions that people may have if you've come across things that are working. The interesting thing is, it's been interesting to see how we've gotten some great suggestions from the business world around Zoom meetings and interacting and different platforms and stuff. So if you come across any technology or any ways to utilize Zoom that you think we would benefit from, I would love to hear it. Anything else?
Hey, Thad.
Hey, Nicole.
I have a question regarding Seesaw.
Okay.
And I brought this up with Ms. Brody, and I wanted to see if anyone else was struggling with the technology aspect of uploading their homework.
Okay.
You have to go in and actually like click on the T, and then they upload their math responses.
Okay.
Boxes are really small, and I even struggle with trying to get her responses in there. And we've had a couple meltdowns, and there's been some struggles with, she's so caught up in like getting it right on Seesaw, and she's unable to follow along in the class because she's still stuck on that first box. Whereas the assignment itself, I mean, she can blow through the responses in less than a minute, but we're spending 20 minutes trying to input these responses in the technology. And I don't know if the decision to move to virtual responses was because not everyone had a printer, but if it's possible that we could also, you know, and I brought this up with Ms. Brody, so it's not, I don't want to feel like I'm going above her head.
No.
Yeah, in general, like it was much easier when we could print the things out, and then Sophie could actually write them in. I'd rather actually have her physically writing and thinking about the responses rather than the technology. So curious to see if anyone else had challenges with that, and if that thought process was more to make it more fair and equitable for people who don't have printers to be able to do it that way.
Yeah, and I think that that is one piece. We have been constantly sort of paying attention to the equity issue and the printing and trying to make that as seamless as possible. We've also had a couple of moments, and we're struggling right now with this in 4th grade, where our intent is to have technology make life easier, and it actually sometimes makes it harder. And, you know, we sometimes have to take a step back and say, let's just do it the old school way. You know, there are moments where we're trying to use Pear Deck and technologies that are you know, bright and shiny and dazzling, and really what is easiest is just to have the students hold up their answer on a whiteboard, right? And so we're learning those things, and I think that sometimes it does require bumping up against walls and hitting a little bit of frustration for us to figure that out. So the feedback is good, and it sounds like you know, we may have to continue to attend to this, and we may need to revert to some of the older systems of doing things, because you know, printing out and turning things in is not, it's not out of the question to go back to that realm. So I meet with my 2nd grade teachers this week, so I'll loop in with them and see what's going on.
Thank you.
I think ultimately everyone is on the same page that their emotions trump cognition. So truly, if that's causing stress and all worry for her, and I don't want to speak for Ashley, but I know that both the 2nd grade teachers would be more than willing to get creative and figure out what works for you guys in your home specifically. So if that means writing things out and taking a picture of it and posting it to Seesaw for particular families or whatever it might be, I'm not going to be surprised they'll do anything to make it flexible for you guys.
Yeah.
Talking to us.
And I have a lot of empathy in those moments. I am thinking back to the first lower school assembly that didn't happen because the link was wrong. And in those moments where something is going wrong on technology and you know, either your child or the entire lower school is looking to you for a solution, it's a very stressful moment. And so I definitely have a lot of empathy for all of you parents out there. My daughter this morning, right before assembly, was asking to update her Zoom account and wondering where the administrative password was. And, you know, I was texting my wife to try to get that because I didn't have it written down, and it you know, really quickly escalates into a not very fun situation. So when in doubt, reach out, please, because we don't want people sitting with that stuff if it's an ongoing problem. Yeah, Caleb.
All right. Yeah, the Seesaw is super frustrating at times. It seemed help Roman on the laptop. It seemed to be much faster. But I don't know. I don't have one. But do those pens, those Apple pens, work? Would that be maybe an option? So it's kind of like they can still practice actually writing,
Right,
and using finger paint on the iPad.
That's a good question. We actually did send out fine tip stylus pens to all the third graders. And we did that in the spring, and then we did it again this fall. And I think they're using them with pretty good success. I don't know if those are, you know, as transferable to a second grader developmentally, but I think it's definitely worth checking out. So I'll check in with the second grade teachers on that. I'm hoping that it'll be a moot point and we'll be back in person before, you know, I can I can make any major modifications, but I think it's definitely worth exploring. And if you have a stylus at home that you want to try and you find something that works, let us know, because that's, you know, we're happy to try things, and there are some pretty inexpensive options out there that might make life a lot easier. Awesome. Yeah, Stephanie.
It's more general, but I just wanted to give you guys the feedback. I know it's by design that this fall feels a lot more like a continual school day than it did in the spring. In the spring, I think for a long time, it felt very much like you have a class and here's an assignment. It was just kind of like a collection of tasks to go through the day. But I just wanted to commend you guys on finding a way to make it, at least, I know every household's moving through this differently, but at least in our house, to feel very much like one continual day with like the ebbs and flows, and everybody has their moments from time to time. But it feels a lot more like school than like an online class here, an assignment there. And that continuity is working really well in our house.
Well, it's good to hear, because I mean, we learned so much even in the short period of time that we were engaged in this in the spring. And you know, it is a different place that we're in. You know, in the spring, I think we were just in a little bit of a stopgap mode of like, how can we make the best of this? And we didn't realize that it was going to be as long as it was. And knowing that we're going to be starting out and building relationships and really trying to create this sense of normalcy, that was a lot of what we spent time really from the spring all the way through the summer designing and trying to get teachers ready for. So I'm glad to hear that it's going well. It is meant to be flexible. And so again, you know, what teachers are trying to do is to create that sense of a classroom experience where kids can stay in the classroom if they need to for those writing assignments. But there may also be times where your child has the ability to move away from that. And so if they're doing independent work, it may be that the teacher or the support teacher may stay online with them for support, but they also may have the ability to log off. So when in doubt with that situation too, feel free to check in with teachers, because your child may be saying, I'm done with class, and on the schedule, it may still be listed as their class is still going, and the teacher may actually still be there, but they may not have to be on. So, you know, you can make those decisions as a family, whether you want your child. I know some parents have said, no matter what, we'd like you to stay on the class the whole time, even if you're working quietly on something else or reading a book or whatnot. But you know, we want it to be flexible for different families in different situations. Anything else? We're coming up on almost 11 o'clock here, so I want to be respectful of people's time. I would say everyone knows where to find me. I am on email all day long, so that's usually the quickest way to get a response. You can also give me a call, and I'm happy to talk that way. Happy to set up Zoom calls. I will be reaching out to new parents for new parent meetings. And for those of you that are returning, I don't want you to feel left out. So if you want to have some FaceTime and want to just check in, I'd love to meet with you. Or if you have a concern or something you want to ask, feel free anytime. And Danielle, I know, is also in the same boat as far as, you know, she would love to hear from you if you have questions or concerns. Danielle really will be your point person. So some of you may know Teresa Hall as well. And she is really working primarily with the 4th through 8th grade. They alternate days a little bit on campus. And so Danielle, what days are you on campus?
I'm on campus Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
So there may be days where, you know, once we're back in person, or if you reach out, you may get Teresa to start with, and she may transition you over to working with Danielle, and it'll just sort of depend on what's going on. But please go to who you know. If you have relationships with people, ask questions and lean on us for whatever's going on.
That last question for me. When will the link be available for last night's meeting? David wasn't able to attend, and I had to jump off at like 7:20, so there was a lot of unanswered chat questions. I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, last I heard, Sophie Schulman was going to try to send it out today. But if it doesn't go out via email today, it will definitely be linked in the Hip Pocket tomorrow.
Great. Okay.
So all of those videos, and there's actually a website that you'll be linked to in the Hip Pocket where you can go back and watch all the coffees or anything that you may have missed. But when in doubt, it'll be on the Wednesday Hip Pocket, which I know she was trying to send it out via email today as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you for taking time to log in today. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your kids. Be gentle with yourselves and stay healthy.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.